Hi, you guys. This is Trina with Brains and Bells. And I am here because we are doing our practical strength class coming up Monday, December 7th at 8 a.m. I am so excited. I wanted to go through some of the equipment and some of the common movements we'll be doing in the class. And just because a couple people reached out and had some really good questions, and also because I'm so excited, I can't wait. I developed the practical strength class just so that we would get a chance to work on some of the foundational movements and the foundational concepts that we need to start to build a healthful exercise program, whatever we want that to look like. There's just certain concepts that we need to inhabit in our body. Um, and I've sort of learned this through trial and error in my own personal movement, and then also in my experience as a physical therapist over the past 13 years, and a physical therapy aide for 7 years prior to that. So I've just had a lot of work with people through the years, and I've seen, sort of what's worked, what hasn't worked. And what I notice in most of us is that we have this tendency to work so hard and so diligently, but oftentimes we're doing these activities that are like really challenging, like calculus, and we haven't perfected the basics of algebra. You know, so this is really a class to get back to the basics. We're going to work with some concepts around neutral spine. We're going to work with concepts around gluteal strength, scapular stability, and we're going to start on the ground. And when you are building an exercise routine, generally, you start on the ground and you start with the most basic movement plane, which is usually this forward and back, this sagittal movement plane. And then you start to build from there. Once you come up to your feet, we start with static, so staying still, and then dynamic on two legs, and then we start to progress. We start to come to one leg static, one leg dynamic. You'll notice that we won't use, things like the ball to create instability at first. We're going to really start with the floor as much as we can, with the exception of a foam roller. So some of the equipment to get started that I really, really highly recommend, if you have them, is a foam roller and a gym ball. If you don't have either one of these, you may want to get one or the other based on what I show you today, what we're going to be building towards, um, and just kind of see where you might want to use it. Right now, we have all women in our class. And so I have done some research on bone density, bone building, and there's some great research out of UCSF from Dr. Wendy Katz that I'm hoping we can incorporate in. And Dr. Katz, in her movement research, she did a program. She used this foam roller quite a bit. So either the gym ball or foam roller might be really helpful because we're going to be working with a lot of the muscles that help to control posture. Okay, but first off, what we're going to get started with is a movement called an ab brace. And this is probably one of the movements that is the most misunderstood, and probably because it's the most simple activity, people just tend to overdo this one. Okay, so the abs are not just on the front of your body, they actually run around the sides of your body and they attach into the fascia of the low back. And so when they are active for us, they blend with some of the musculature of the glutes and the lumbar spine, the low back, and they kind of create like this corset. And so I want you to start thinking about your abs as not just being in the front of your body, but as actually wrapping around your waist and attaching into the small of the back. Okay. And hopefully that will start to make a little bit more sense as we go along. Another concept I want you to start to identify or think about is the diaphragm being this umbrella shaped muscle underneath the rib cage, and then the pelvic floor being a hammock shaped muscle, which creates like the floor of this whole trunk area. We're going to really learn how to stabilize the space between the rib cage and the pelvis. Okay, and also we're going to learn to stabilize the neck. All right, sounds good. So let's get started with just a couple of the movements we're going to work with. Obviously, our 45-minute class is going to be more involved than this and more involved. I just wanted to give you guys a couple different exercises to be familiar when we're getting started. So I will grab this yoga block. We are going to make our way onto our backs. While you are on your back, I want you just first to take note of how your spine contacts the ground. You can take your hands and place them onto your belly. And as you inhale, see if you can feel your abdomen expanding three-dimensionally. And as you exhale, see if you can feel your belly falling back in. And so when we breathe in this way, when we allow the air to really come down into the base of our lungs and our diaphragm to pull down, it displaces the content of our abdomen. A lot of times, keep going with your breathing. People will say when they're doing this, I have the opposite. When I breathe in, I draw my belly in and my ribs come out. So see if you can. It's okay, but I would say that that is a breathing pattern that we're going to move away from in this class. You might want to place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Keep your chest soft as you breathe in and see if you can allow the breath to really reside in your abdomen. Good. So diaphragmatic breathing. I have a video on diaphragmatic breathing. If you go onto my YouTube channel, you might want to check that out if you're having a little bit of trouble with that. But let's go on to our abdominal brace. So take your hand and feel to see what the relationship is like between your low back and the ground. And so you might notice as you are resting here on the ground, your head contacts the ground heavily, your shoulders, your mid back, your ribs, and then you'll have a little gap through the lumbar spine, and then the back of the pelvis will probably be quite heavy. We're keeping our knees bent just for this demonstration, but later on we'll play around with our leg position. So notice the space or gap or lightness between your low back and the ground, okay? And place one hand on your belly. You don't have to keep your hand here if that's uncomfortable for your shoulder, but I want you to breathe in again using your diaphragmatic breath. And as you exhale, gently squeeze in on a yoga block or a small ball or a folded up pillow as you exhale. Do that a couple times. Breathe in, let your belly be soft. Breathe out. Squeeze in onto the block as you exhale and see if you can imagine drawing your abs, like your corset, in towards the center of your spine three-dimensionally. Take a breath in. Exhale, breathe out. Squeezing gently in on the block and finding your abdominal brace. So you'll notice that your spine is not moving at all. In fact, if you feel your spine moving, you want to change something. you want to see if there's some kind of movement that you're doing. A lot of people push back into the spinal flexion when they do this ab brace. You want this just to be isometric, because when we are up and walking around, keep going with your breathing in and then breathing out ab brace. When we're up and walking around, we're not going to walk around with our pelvis tucked under, right? When we're squatting, we need to be able to move our pelvis. When we're taking big steps, when we're climbing stairs, when we're doing all the activities in life, we don't want our abs to work for us just when we're in that flexed position. We want our abs and back to support us when we are in all sorts of positions. And we have to start with this neutral. We have to find neutral first, and we should be able to maintain this neutral. Yeah? Okay, good. So moving on, we're going to do a couple movements of the shoulders here I wanted to go through so you can let that block go. We're going to take our ab brace with us, though. All right? So rolling over onto the belly. And in this class in practical strength, we're going to do shoulders. We're going to focus on the core and lumbar stability. We're going to focus on the shoulders, specifically scapular stability, the hips, which will help support the knees, and then the feet and ankles. So I'm just going to hit on, the primary sort of the basics of each of those joints today. So that was a beginning core strengthening exercise, the ab brace, neutral spine. You can start to work on those, okay? Let me take my hoodie off just so that you guys can see my shoulders. Now, if you have sensitivity in your back when you're lying on the ground, you might want to get a pillow at this point and place a pillow underneath your abdomen, Okay. If you feel okay lying on the ground without anything, just grab your hand towel. So we're going to fold up the hand towel just so that it's maybe, an inch high, an inch and a half high, and we'll place our forehead on it. So the back of my neck is long. Yeah. It's not rotated to the side, and I'm also not looking up. I have length in the back of my neck, and I can take my hands and bring them palms down towards my hips. Now from here, lift your low belly. And it helps sometimes too to think about squeezing your buns. Find your abdominal brace here. Okay. Draw the shoulder blades on your back. So we're going to move our shoulder blades. Shoulder heads will move away from the floor as we draw the shoulder blades together. Hold and then release. Try that again. Abdominal brace. Squeeze the buns. Draw the shoulder blades back and down. Hold 2, 3, and release. Let's do about 3 more this way. Go ahead and draw the shoulder blades back and down. Now maybe you hover your hands off of the ground. Keep the abs up and in. Keep the glutes squeezing. Make sure that you're not lifting your hands higher than your shoulder blades. You want your shoulder blade movement to be the largest movement. Gently release, coming back down to the ground. 2 more times. Draw the shoulder blades down and back. Hover the hands, hold, 2, 3, release. Abs are engaged, ab brace, glutes are squeezed. Draw the shoulder blades down and back and hold. And release everything. Good. All right, making our way back onto our back. So again, we're starting on the floor because the floor allows us to build a lot of awareness about where we are in space. Right? We're going to be working up to our feet to functional movements, but we're not going to be starting there. So if it feels comfortable for your shoulders, take your hands behind your head, okay? And in fact, we don't need our towel roll. We'll just set our towel roll to the side. So with the hands behind the head, we're going to think about having a skewer from our right ear all the way straight through to the left ear. So now this is starting to work on some of the deep flexors in the front of our throat. So you should start to feel muscles working along this front aspect of your throat during this next activity. So as you rotate along that skewer that runs through your ears, it's like doing a gentle head nod. Yes. And then release. And then again, just a gentle head nod. Yes. And what you might feel with your hands is you might feel, the skull, the sort of more inferior portion of the skull come into the hands. And as you release, you'll rest back to that starting point, that sort of big lump, the occiput on the back of your head. And with your eyes, you're going to make a gentle tick down, like a line down, looking towards your knees, towards your belly, and then allow your eyes to come back up. Good. We'll try this 1 or 2 more times. Now, if this is new for you, this cervical flexion, this head nod, yes, I would stay with that. I wouldn't go farther. But if you've been doing a practice where you've been working on your neck flexors, then you can move on. So the way that we would move on, we would find, again, that skewer, we would rotate about that axis. So it's very high. It's like the first cervical vertebra that we're rotating around, looking down towards the knee. So we're in this flexed posture. Now I'm going to imagine like my hands are a scale, like at the grocery store. So I'm going to begin to lift the cantaloupe of my head off of my hands. And I feel very shaky and I release and come back down. So it's this very small movement. Okay. Again, relax, come back to the relaxed place, gentle head nod. Yes, either stay there or begin to unweight your hands from your head and release back down and relax. I can really tell that I need to work on that one. If you hear any clicking or anything like that, it's okay. It's a sign you might be getting more movement than you want, but it's not a sign to avoid. You might want to start with just the first activity. Okay, good. Let's move on to the hips. So we're going to do a bridge today. Bridges are one of my favorite movements and they're really functional. Yeah, bridges create the glute strength that we need to move into squats eventually. Also, we need to be able to move around in bed. So lifting our hips up off the ground is a really important thing to be able to do. Now, this is really different from a yoga bridge. So a lot of times in yoga, you are coming into extension during our bridge. During this bridge, we're going to really try to keep, like I was talking about before, stability through the area in the center portion of our spine. So before we even move, I want everybody to think about a gentle head nod, yes, and putting that abdominal brace on. So you might want to take a couple belly breaths here. Holding my abs. Once I get to that place where I hold my abs, I release my hands. I'm going to push my feet down, squeeze my buns. Now, this is happening. This is a glute experience. So my glutes are working like crazy. My hamstrings are working like crazy. My abs are on, but my back is nice and straight. So I'm just picking up my pelvis in one piece and keeping everything else as still as possible. Barely touching down, exhaling, lifting, squeezing. So there is no shame. If you don't know if your glutes are on, please, please check. You can do a little glute check just by pressing that muscle. You can feel if that muscle's turned on. Gently release and come back up. Good. Let's do about 4 more. So this is the foundation for our squats, our lunges, everything else. So we want to be using good form while we're working on these. Come down and release. Good. Okay, great. So make your way onto your side. The last exercise I'm going to demo today is for the feet. So we've done a core strengthening, the ab bracing for the center part for our core stability. We have done the scapular retraction where we're lying face down for building shoulder stability, scapular stability. That's the core and foundation of our shoulders. We did a cervical spine chin tuck. That is the foundation of strength we need for our neck and head. And we just added a hip extension from a bridge, and that's starting to build the strength that we need in our lower body for lunges and squats and things that are more functional. Okay, so now let's get into our feet. The feet are some of the areas that I think as adults we're probably the most disconnected with. So I have a foot video on here actually that's a little more involved. And so if you are somebody who has experienced a lot of foot trauma, foot surgery, if you have a lot of foot pain, you might want to look at that video too after this. This is a very simple exercise. This is sort of like a little sample today. So this is just a very simple beginning exercise. This is foot doming. So we're going to work on the pelvic floor stability, the diaphragm under our rib cage, and also we have this beautiful muscular diaphragm at the bottom of our foot. So we're going to learn to create stability in our body when we're doing functional movements by engaging these 3 different diaphragms. Okay? So our foot diaphragm, and I'm just going to, I'll show you guys like this. Our foot diaphragm resides on the inner arch of our foot. And what you want to think about when you are doing this exercise, foot doming, is you want to think about drawing your toes closer to your heel. So I don't know if you can see that. I might get my white towel down just so there's a little more. There you go. So my toes are relaxed for the most part. They crunch up a little bit as I do this, but I'm shortening my foot essentially. I'm drawing my toes back towards my heel bone. Nothing else is really moving. I'm just doming my foot. So eventually, you could imagine we're going to engage these muscles when we're standing. Something else to notice here, I'm not crunching the towel. That is something that we'll sometimes do. We'll add the toe flexion. This is really just for the muscles of the arch of the foot. So foot doming. Okay, so maybe like 10 to 15 of those. just to get started. Now, where the rubber really meets the road with those foot doming exercises is, can you shorten your feet by lifting your arches? Maintain that as you come up to standing. Woo. So that is a different experience, and you might find all kinds of things going on at the toes as you do that. All right, so I hope this was a helpful exploration and helpful for you in starting to get some of the basics of what we're going to be building on over the course of our practical strength course. If you haven't signed up for this strength course and you're interested in it, or you think it might be appropriate for you, go ahead and email me. You can reach me at brainsandbells@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or just check in with you and see if it might be a good fit for you. All right, that's it for today, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you all in class on Monday. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.